So not enough is being done to protect people who are obsessively preyed upon by stalkers and to stop cases of harassment which can lead to murder. A group of MPs want a new law making stalking a specific offence in England and Wales. Sky's Katie Stallard reports.
He may turn round any second, Lou, so put the curtain back slowly as you can.
This is what it feels like to become a prisoner in your own home.
He's looking round.
Tracy Morgan filmed her stalker from the window of her house, a work colleague who became obsessed. For 10 years, he relentlessly pursued her. Her mother recorded him sleeping in his car nearby.
What do you think your game is? Sleeping Beauty? Have you got nothing better to do?
In the end, he was jailed for life for the attempted murder of another woman. Tracy campaigned to bring in the current law in 1997, but 15 years on, she feels nothing has changed.
Even now, victims are faced with misunderstanding and indifference to this crime. I say stalking is mental rape. Victims aren't you lucky to have this attention? You should be flattered. Would you say that to a rape victim? Some people call stalking murder in slow motion, because sometimes, sadly, that's what happens, and that's what we want to try and prevent.
An independent inquiry will conclude today that the law as it stands is not fit for purpose, that a new stalking law should be passed to make stalking a criminal offence as it is in Scotland and establish a national register of stalkers, as well as mandatory training for all criminal justice professionals. Laura Richards set up the first homicide prevention unit at New Scotland Yard and says it's time we took stalking seriously.
Many of the murders, in fact the majority, I can't think of any that didn't have a stalking that manifested, because normally you get an abusive relationship, then separation and then stalking when someone is fixated.
One of the cases she reviewed was that of Claire Bernal. Claire's stalker was assessed as low risk and allowed out on bail, even though he had threatened to kill her. He followed her here to the department store where she worked and shot her 4 times in the head before turning the gun on himself.
Claire was very, very frightened. Her world was caving in. If we get a stalking law, a specific stalking law, I do believe that people in Claire's situation may well be protected. And go away!
Tracy's stalker is serving life in prison, but he's already applied once for parole and every 12 months he can do so again. For Tracy and others like her, this will never be over, and without even recognising stalking as a criminal offence, they feel the law is powerless to protect them. Katie Stallard, Sky News, Central London.
Let's talk to Jennifer Perry, who wrote the recently published National Guidance on Digital Stalking, joins us from Rushcliffe in Nottinghamshire. Good to talk to you, Jennifer. I mean, in terms, first of all, of what specifically can be done, what changes in the law would you like to see?
I think we need tougher penalties. Currently, a lot of the stalkers are only given 6 months, 6 months if they break a restraining order. And we need tougher penalties for people that are threatening women. And I think there needs to be more awareness amongst the police about the magnitude of the stalking and the impact it has on the victims.
Well, I mean, do you think the police really don't take it seriously sometimes, particularly, I guess, if it's not in person, this issue of digital stalking?
Well, I think the difficulty is that often the police don't recognize the fact that when the victim comes to them with a series of harassment, what he doesn't realize is how much that stalker is doing offline. They'll stalk, on average, 32 of people's friends and families. So they're not just stalking the victim. Last week you heard Claire Waxman, he had Googled her 40,000 times in a year. So they don't recognize that what they're seeing is only a tip of the iceberg. And I think once they recognize that, then it will be taken more seriously.
And I know, I mean, in terms of other things that can be done, you're at the National Stalking Training Academy. What kind of training do you offer and who to?
Well, we're offering training on the national guidelines, and that was just launched. And Rushcliffe here was the first one to get the training on the guidelines because their community safety program really recognized the problems that they're having and that they needed step-by-step instructions on what to tell victims if they're being stalked. And that's what these guidelines do. It isn't, set your privacy settings. It's how you set your privacy settings. How do you turn off your geotags on mobile phones? That's what the police need. They need very specific advice on what steps they need to be telling victims to do. And that's why this training is different than previous training they've had.
I mean, so that's how to deal with it, how to avoid it, how to prevent it. But if none of that's worked, then you need the criminal law to come down with its full force.
Well, you need lots of things. You need support. You need to make yourself safer in your as much as you can, and then absolutely, you need help gathering the evidence so they can bring a criminal prosecution.
Jennifer, great to talk to you. Jennifer Perry there, who has recently published the National Guidance on Digital Stalking at the National Stalking Training Academy in Rushcliffe there. Thanks.